Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville, Fiber Internet, Security Solutions, and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Mallard Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. Bloomington's mayor addresses the $1.1 million gateway project and its controversial 40-foot monolith.
The actual gateway is under construction or done now, the physical piece that's going to stand there.
The only thing holding the project up is the Board of Public Works. The Cook Company is getting into the real estate business to help its employees find homes near work.
Persons really should be paying no more than 30% of their income on housing, and that is becoming increasingly more difficult to do.
A lack of affordable housing and the impact on employers coming up. And it's been a week since some auto workers went on strike. Ahead, where negotiations stand. Those stories, plus the latest news headlines from across the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. The United Auto Workers has escalated its strike against the big three automakers, calling this morning for an additional 38 facilities across 20 states to go on strike. Last week, the UAW called for targeted strikes at just 3 facilities, one each for Ford, GM, and Stellantis, which makes Chrysler and Dodge products. But like last week when the strike began, no facilities in Indiana were called on to hit the picket lines this time. For more on the strike, we're joined by Indiana Public Broadcasting's Adam Yahia Reyes, who's been covering this story. Adam, thanks so much for being with us. So the UAW hasn't called for a nationwide strike. What's the union's strategy?
So the union is doing this targeted or stand-up strike, sort of reminiscent of the sit-down strikes that originated with the UAW, sort of a play on that idea. And the idea is that they're going to hit the company where it hurts most and where the company least expected, to keep the companies on their toes and keep on applying pressure gradually rather than just one big push that results in the UAW spending a bunch of money on strike pay at all of these facilities at all 3 companies at once. So this time around, Ford was left out of the additional strikes because the union said that they had made more meaningful progress in negotiations than the other 2. So it also sort of allows the union to reward one company while sort of setting an example with the others. And even everybody on the ground, our local, union contacts, keeps everybody guessing. Nobody really knows what's going to happen until the moment it's been announced.
So what are you hearing? Are they making any progress in negotiations?
With Ford in particular, yes. And GM has also moved on a couple of key items, tiers for different types of workers outside of production. So the facilities that are on strike right now are parts distribution facilities responsible for getting aftermarket parts for official out company parts to customers and dealers for maintenance. And the workers at those facilities were set on very different wage scales, depending on when they were hired, also different wage scales than workers at production facilities. And so GM and Ford have sort of made deals to put all of those workers on one tier rather than having separate tiers. Ford has also made progress towards cost of living adjustments, but GM and Stellantis sort of are behind on that and a few other key items that the union says it's really not willing to compromise on, but we'll see where things go.
Right. So do you expect Indiana plants to be impacted at some point soon?
We have seen some impact at Indiana plants. So Stellantis has announced that it plans to do 300 layoffs in Kokomo as a result of the strikes, because the parts those Kokomo plants make were going to the Toledo plant that is now on strike. Those parts don't have anywhere to go anymore. So the union is now or the company is now planning to do some layoffs to sort of reduce production there. We're not sure when or if any plants in Indiana will go on strike.
Yeah. So how long do you think that this can keep going? And can this drag on?
You know, it really depends. I think that because of the way the union is spending money, it can probably afford to go on a lot longer. How long the companies can afford to go on before they give in is sort of an open question. You know, the last strike in 2019 at GM, that was just GM alone, but all GM plants simultaneously lasted 40 days. So we'll have to see if the strike is, or if the strike strategy is successful in getting the union the deal it wants, or if we're going to be at this for a while.
Adam, thanks so much for your reporting on this. We have to leave it there, and I'm sure we'll hear more as time goes on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The Bloomington City Council recently rejected an ordinance making it easier for the city to remove items blocking sidewalks, streets, and roads. Lucas Gonzalez reports it's been widely seen as an effort to prevent homeless individuals from camping in public spaces.
The streets of Bloomington are often teeming with pedestrians, especially when classes are in session and students flock downtown. But the city says those spaces aren't always accessible, as sometimes stray items prevent people from using them as intended. That's why the city tried to enact legislation making it easier to forcibly remove items blocking the public right-of-way. City Attorney Mike Rooker says the measure was prompted by an instance this year in which a person refused to remove their belongings from the right-of-way.
Staff reached out to law enforcement for help. However, law enforcement indicated that they could not address right-of-way obstructions absent a more specific ordinance defining when the right-of-way would be considered blocked.
The measure came before the City Council last week, but was rejected by most members. Had it passed, Rooker says it would have defined in the city code what constitutes an obstruction. That would allow the city to remove obstructions more easily. The ordinance makes no mention of homeless individuals, but the council members and residents alike see it as a response to homeless encampments in public spaces. Rooker says people generally remove their belongings when asked, but in the case earlier this year, the city considered getting a court order since its code does not define a right-of-way obstruction.
So the idea here is we have to have a mechanism in our code in that circumstance, which is admittedly rare, but nonetheless very possible and is something we have experienced.
Some criticize the city for a perceived lack of consistency when it comes to obstructions, like scooters, which continue to block sidewalks despite multiple measures intended to regulate them. Even though Rooker framed the ordinance as a solution to accessibility issues, Councilmember Isabel Piedmont Smith challenged that notion, describing it as an attempt to further criminalize homelessness.
This is about having the legal and law enforcement tools to use against people who are unhoused, who don't have any other place to keep their belongings except with them.
Roughly a dozen members of the public spoke at the meeting. Most spoke against the ordinance, saying it targets homeless individuals without offering them any solutions. Nick Angelos was one of 4 representatives of the mutual aid organization Help Ourselves who spoke. He says the city should consider sanctioned spaces for homeless individuals to stay at.
We have plenty of vacant lots in town. We have plenty of resources to make this happen. I just don't think we've seen the will in the government so far.
But Councilmember Sue Scamboluri says the city's already investing in long-term solutions to homelessness.
I don't accept the assertion that the city is heartless and simply not doing anything productive in that regard. I think the tension exists because at the same time we are advocating for a long-term solution-based approach, we also have real-time challenges to deal with.
The ordinance came before the council after the Board of Public Works approved a non-binding resolution of the same nature in mid-August. That passed the same week the Parks Board approved a ban on tents and other enclosed structures in Bloomington parks during the daytime. Camping at parks overnight was banned in early 2021. Had the ordinance passed, the city says an individual who fails to remove an obstruction when asked to would be considered trespassing. That also concerned some council members. Rooker says the city would only pursue punitive options as a last resort, however. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Lucas Gonzalez.
The initiative raised questions about whether the city acted lawfully when enforcing bans on camping at public parks. The city's legal department says a court order is not required to remove tents or other items from parks or public rights of way. We're joined now by Callie Lichter for the latest headlines from around the state. Welcome back to the show, Callie.
Welcome back to you, Joe.
Thank you.
Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton says the controversial City Gateway monolith is already built or close to being finished. He says the plans for the $1.1 million gateway are funded by bicentennial bonds passed in 2018. Even though the project went through the Arts Commission, Parks Department, and public input, then it wasn't until a recent Public Works meeting that people started speaking out against it. That prompted the board to table a vote on signing off on lane and sidewalk closures to begin the project.
This has been long vetted, it's funded, it's planned, and I'm excited about it, and I'm actually confident that when it's done, people will get used to it, love it, and actually take a lot of pictures by it.
The Parks Board is expected to take up a vote on allowing the lane closures at its next meeting on September 26th. Hamilton also explained the city's decision late last week to drop its annexation lawsuit against the state. He says that allows the city to focus on a lawsuit filed against it by remonstrants from 2 of the 7 areas Bloomington wanted to annex. Residents in areas 1A and 1B on the west side, citing the pandemic, want more time to gather signatures to fight annexation.
Those are the most important. With this strategy where we drop a piece of the constitutional litigation and say, let's just go to trial on 1A and 1B. We're confident that the court will say yes.
Hamilton says remaining in the lawsuit against the state could delay the annexation process by years. The city of Bloomington says it's on track to meet its emission goals. That's according to its 2022 greenhouse gas inventory track source of planet-warming gases within the city. It's the second compiled by local government since Bloomington's Sustainability Action Plan was laid out in 2018. The inventory estimates annual emissions over the last 15 years, which the city says shows a positive trend.
We were happy to present when we gave the presentation to council that we are on a downward trajectory and we are on track to kind of meet those targets.
Emissions have decreased 16% since 2008, while the population has grown by about the same percentage. The report estimates a 28% per capita decrease since 2008. The city hopes to reduce total emissions 25% by 2030. The Eastern Green School Board voted in June 2022 to start a high school soccer team, and this week the Thunderbirds played their first home game ever. Sarah Molina has this story.
Eastern Green has had a junior high soccer program for 3 years, but without a high school program, there was nowhere for the kids to continue playing, until now. Thanks to a donation of a new soccer field by the Carl and Marcy Cook family, Eastern was able to add a varsity program.
Once we finally got the go-ahead and I saw dump trucks pulling up and moving stuff, I was like, oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun 3 years.
Marcy Cook is an Eastern Green grad, and she and Carl have children in the school system. Head soccer coach Curtis Moffitt says the family has given back to the Bloomfield community for years.
When we started playing, I saw their eyes getting big, like, wow, like we have something here. Like there's something special. There's a potential for something amazing. And I think they wanted to invest into that.
And now that they have a field to play on, Moffitt is excited about what the future holds for the program.
Having a field now to where I can watch these guys pour into the next generation is really neat.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Sarah Molina.
And Joe, the Thunderbirds are still looking for their first win after losing their home opener Monday to Bloomfield 6-4.
Still very early in the season. I'm sure they'll be fine. Thanks, Callie. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. The 30th annual Lotus World Music and Arts Festival returns to Bloomington next week. And we visit a housing addition in Spencer built for employees of the Cook Company. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
I've always believed that people are at the heart of every story we tell.
Any story or interview that makes people who watch it say, you know, I hadn't thought of it in that way. That, for me, is gold.
I like to be able to leave the viewer with some sort of emotion, whether it's outrage, whether it's someone overcoming long odds. telling a big story through an individual story.
What makes the NewsHour different is that we have time to be thoughtful about the stories that we tell, the voices that we intend to elevate.
I know the role that good journalism plays in making all of us feel more connected to each other, in helping all of us understand each other a little bit better. I see this as a mission, and I see this as a service.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. In just one short week, the 30th annual Lotus World Music Arts Festival will kick off in Bloomington. It will feature performances from over 20 international artists and a new dance hall. Isabella Vesperini has this report.
Katarina Koch is Lotus Executive Director. She says her team started recruiting artists for the 5-day festival in the spring. They were looking for artists that were already on tour and wanting to get global exposure. The festival is well known in the world music community.
We have been, throughout these last 30 years, a place where artists and musicians have been able to make their break here. They've gone on to do incredible things in their careers after coming to the Lotus Festival.
Koch is especially excited for the new dance hall opportunities, which will be held at the John Waldron Arts Center. There will be 15-minute instructional dance sessions before each band starts their set, ranging from salsa to Irish and folk music dances.
I think that music and art build community in a way that really is exciting and celebratory and full of joy. And that's really what we want to be experiencing as people living together, is laughter and fun and vibrant energy from our community.
The Lotus in the Park event will have an art camp geared more towards kids, local food trucks, outdoor performances, and a merchandise tent. The 4th Street stage will feature local artists and acoustic international artists every evening of the festival. There will also be yoga sessions at the Farr Center.
We love to see young people coming out, enjoying the music, having a good time with their friends, and being able to just enjoy the vibrancy of the downtown life.
The festival is run heavily on volunteers. Almost 250 volunteers have helped with this year's festival so far. The festival receives over $150,000 in ticket sales to help fund future festivals. The rest of the money comes from donations, sponsors, and grants. Over 12,000 people attended the festival prior to the pandemic. Though attendance has dropped since then, Koch hopes to welcome over 5,000 people this year.
The Lotus World Music Festival is only here in Bloomington, Indiana. However, there are world music festivals across the country, though we are really proud to be the largest world music festival in the Midwest.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Isabella Vesperini.
The festival will run September 28th through October 1st. Tickets can be purchased on the Lotus website. Discounted tickets are available for students and seniors. Employees are starting to move into the affordable homes being built by Cook Group, a pharmaceutical manufacturing company in Monroe County. The company said last year it would build 300 homes. Construction started with homes in Orange County, but now its development in Spencer is underway. Benta Boutier reports.
Headed west on State Road 46 through Spencer, drivers pass by landmarks typical of a town of 2,400. Small local businesses such as Main Street Coffee and Kitchen and chain staples like Walmart. IU grad Molly Cunningham calls it home. You can't find her address yet on Google Maps, but she moved into a budding neighborhood being built by Cook Medical for its employees. She's worked with Cook since 2019 when she finished school. She rented an apartment with her husband in Bloomington, but rent was going up each year.
It was getting really frustrating paying that much money and not really understanding where it was going to other than just to the property management company.
She started looking for houses but thought she'd have to get an older home to stay within budget.
We knew our next step would be owning a home, but it just, a couple years ago, just didn't seem very attainable, just with the pandemic and everything, like the housing market going crazy because of it, and it just was a pipe dream.
She heard about Cook's plans to create worker housing about a year ago. She and her husband applied and got pre-approved for a mortgage. They closed on the house over the summer. Ron Walker is president of Cook's Workforce Housing. He says housing is a challenge for company recruitment and retention. Cook heard similar concerns from a spectrum of employees, from single-income households making about $40,000 a year to dual-income households making $120,000.
That was kind of our target group because that's a group we thought has the ability to own a home. Many of them have expressed an interest in owning a home, but yet the wage levels compared to the way the housing costs and prices have gone up, it's just becoming more and more difficult.
These houses cost about $200,000. Cook has built 14 so far and sold 7, one being the Cunninghams. The idea is to take money from one house and put it into the next. Walker says the project received Ready grant funds from the state. The development's been done in an unofficial partnership with the town of Spencer, which brought water and wastewater treatment to the area. Cook voluntarily annexed the 62-acre development into the town. Richard Lorenz says Spencer used Ready grant funds in the state revolving fund to pay for the infrastructure. He says Spencer's population was aging and not seeing much migration in, causing economic troubles for the town.
The contractors were tending to work in the Monroe County area and other high-density locations rather than here.
Cook, located in Monroe County, needed space for employees. Lorenz says Spencer, just a county over, was able to provide that. In Monroe County, 60% of renters are cost-burdened. Median rent is $1,500 a month, almost twice the state median. And Monroe County's median home value is $60,000 more than the state. Samantha Spurgel says issues of affordability and availability are common statewide, but needs and solutions vary by region.
Persons really should be paying no more than 30% of their income on housing, and that is becoming increasingly more difficult to do.
Statewide, 40% of renters are cost-burdened. Median home value statewide went from $160,000 to $227,000 in the last 4 years. She says economic and housing policy are connected. People need opportunities to increase wealth through wage growth and education. But if production of affordable housing doesn't keep pace with demand, prices go up for everybody.
The needs in an urban population may vary greatly from rural. There may not be the need for the same level of production in a more rural area. There may be need to address existing housing stock in a rural community.
She says Cook's initiative to build in Spencer will have long-term benefits for employees and the town. Cunningham says the months-long process of getting her home will be worth it to feel settled.
So to actually feel settled and decorate a little bit, figure out how to manage this yard situation. I do not have a green thumb, so it's going to be quite the process to figure out how to do yard work. So that's yard work, getting used to Spencer and discovering what's here.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Ben Taboutier.
Though the State Housing Authority didn't support this development specifically, it's partnered with 4 employers since 2019 to support workforce housing initiatives. That includes one for the French Lick Resort in Orange County, which is also owned by Cook. A new dining spot, the Vault Pub, opened its doors at the Indiana Memorial Union in September. But as Callie Lichter reports, it's the first of its kind on the IU campus.
What sets the Vault Pub apart from the other eateries on campus? Patrons will be able to listen to live music, eat locally sourced foods, and drink local alcoholic beverages. While having a pub on campus is a first for IU, Big Ten universities such as Ohio State, Purdue, and Michigan State already run pubs on their campuses.
We have a hotel here, a 189-room Biddle Hotel, where travelers come from all over the world and stay with us. And one of the first questions we get is, where is a pub?
The pub took the location of the former Dunn Meadow Cafe and was part of the Indiana Memorial Union renovation that took place during the height of the pandemic. Shrivastava says the Vault Pub is more than food. It's about IU tradition. The Hoosier spirit is felt in every corner of the pub, from the giant photo of the original Bill Garrett Fieldhouse, the bar counter made from the original Fieldhouse floors, to the signed posters from acts that have performed on campus.
There's a lot of tradition around this room. There's a lot of history around this room. It's a great place to hang out, and it's a great place to be at.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Callie Lichter.
The Vault Pub is open Thursdays from 4 to 10 p.m., Fridays from 4 p.m. to midnight, and Saturdays from noon to midnight. The Indiana football team looks to even its record at 2-2 when they host Akron Saturday night at Memorial Stadium. The Zips are 1-2 and coming off a 35-3 loss at Kentucky.
We've got an important game coming up here at home against Akron to be able to continue to develop our team, build our team, and get better in all three units. So important week for us to be able to lock in.
Allen says he was impressed with leadership. Freshman quarterback Taven Jackson showed in his first game as the starter last week.
I think that will continue to grow throughout the season, and I think you can see that the guys, they believe in him and his ability to make plays in those situations, and that will continue to grow.
The Hoosiers will be wearing all black uniforms for the game, which kicks off 7:30 p.m. on the Big Ten Network. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Mallard Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.